Well, welcome again, everyone, today. And I don't know about you, I find today strangely moving. And it's, I guess, quite a historic Mothering Sunday. And of course, last year, Mothering Sunday 2020, was also historic. Mothering Sunday 2020 took place just a couple of days before everything stopped in terms of the first UK lockdown. And I have very vivid memories which will stay with me, I think, forever, because at that time only the priest was allowed in the church building. I have vivid memories of coming in the ensuing weeks, and it was like the Mary Celeste, and there was still a display here, a Mothering Sunday display here at the front of church, and it was all very strange indeed. Nearly a year later, Mothering Sunday 2021, we are in a very different place, hopefully, by God's grace. We are now on that so-called roadmap out of lockdown into much greater freedom. But I think we all bring an awareness of the acute trauma which all of us, to a greater or a lesser extent, have passed through. As I said, hopefully by God's grace, we now find ourselves on that so-called roadmap to freedom. But it's fair to say that no one emerges from this unscathed, whilst I am acutely aware that some, including some sat here today, emerge with particularly deep wounds. Why do churches insist on calling today Mothering Sunday rather than that more modern, dare I say, transatlantic invention called Mother's Day? Well, because traditionally, mothering was, and this goes way back to something like the 16th century, mothering was about servants and labourers returning home halfway through Lent. This particular Sunday was also known and still known as Refreshment Sunday. Halfway through Lent, servants and labourers were allowed to return to their home churches. They were allowed to mother, to return home to their own communities, their own families, their own churches. So first and foremost, this is the Sunday on which we give thanks for Mother Church. Jesus taught us to address God as Father, though of course God of course is beyond gender. But the term mother has consistently been applied to the community that Jesus founded. Church, at its best, is that caring, nurturing presence which encourages us all in growing up into the likeness of Christ. In the particularly challenging times in which we've been living for the past year or so, I am acutely aware and so very, very proud of how St. Wilfrid's and countless other churches, either physically or virtually, have been a rock of comfort and support for so many. And you may have come across some very positive headlines recently about the church. Apparently in those lovely opinion polls, popularity polls, apparently the church is going up at the moment. Even amongst those who would profess themselves as non-Christians, apparently the popularity of the church has risen by something like a third. Now, the point of this is not so much that we're popular again, or more popular. In fact, Jesus warned against being popular. The important thing behind those figures is I think people recognise the difference that Mother Church has made in these very challenging times. And that's great. And that's something we should be really thankful for today, very proud of, and to keep praying that that be so, because there is much for us to get through yet. So today we give thanks for Mother Church. And of course, as a follow-on from that, we give thanks for all mothers. We look especially to the example of biblical mothers such as Hannah in our first reading, and especially Mary, the mother of Jesus. Their stories remind us of the sacrificial love that is integral to all motherhood. As women of faith, both in their own way, they had to surrender their children to God's plans and purposes for them, and not without considerable pain. Motherhood and fatherhood at its best is not about possessively clinging on to our children as if they are our own. But there comes a point where we have to let go and to let God. And in fact, the best thing we can do in caring for our children is to pray for them. It's not just the godparent's job, it's the parent's job too, because when we see our care of our children in the context of God's greater care of our children, it's then that we can truly care for them in the right way. So on Mothering Sunday, we also give thanks for the extent that those who reared us loved us for God's sake and not just their own sake. And those of us who have any parenting role, we must go on asking for fresh wisdom and grace to do the same. Thirdly, and finally, mothering can simply mean caring. And again, this year, like no other, we bring our thanksgiving to this service for all those who have cared so deeply and so sacrificially for us over the course of the pandemic. Health workers, care workers, teachers, all those wonderful shop workers, our emergency services, and many, many more. Their care has been deeply sacrificial too. Many have literally given up their lives for us and for others. So do take some care over that list that I introduced at the beginning of the service. Think about and pray about those people. Give thanks for them. They have made enormous sacrifices for us all. And as so many have mothered us so profoundly over this last year, let us use this service also to pledge ourselves afresh to the mothering to which God calls each and every one of us. We may or may not be mothers, but we are all called to mother. We all have unique responsibilities and opportunities to show the care of God in our lives. So let's pledge ourselves afresh to that caring that we can all do, that we all must do, even when that means taking up considerable crosses. Amen.